Part 3, The Removal of Donald Trump by Matt Taibbi. And this is where things get spicy, because in part 1, it demonstrates how Twitter employees were, playing favorites to one side of the political spectrum. And in part 2, it illustrates how they were ostracizing anyone that had any kind of differentiating thought from their ideology. And now in parts 3, 4, and 5, it will demonstrate how high-ranking Twitter executives tampered with the 2020 elections, in my opinion, at the behest of the FBI, allegedly, which may very well lead to criminal charges for some of the people involved. As stated, part 3 will cover J6, part 4 will cover the internal chaos that was happening at the time on January the 7th, and part 5 will demonstrate the fallout and the banning of Donald Trump on Jan 8. For starters, this is more just pointing towards the type of character our second favorite employee at Twitter, Yoel Roth, is. These are some internal private Slack messages with him essentially just bragging about how cool and important he is because he has to meet with the FBI. This is how you know he's a mega dork. This is literal hall monitor energy right here. I mean, you're snitching on people for the federal government. That is not something to brag about. And even so, even if you think that Donald Trump is the root of all evil, fair enough. Perhaps he is. Perhaps I'm not going to argue that either way. I don't really care. But let's just say that that is true. Okay. So your thing then is to go and brag about how you're a double agent trying to take him down. Like, shouldn't you be keeping this a secret if your ultimate goal is to take him down? The hubris and idiocracy of this moron that has no morals or backbone. That shows a lack of tact and a lack of grit. Talking about Yoel's calendar, he says, it happens. I'm a big believer in calendar transparency, but I reached a certain point where my meeting became very interesting to people, and there weren't meeting names generic enough to cover. Anyway, let me know. Very boring business meeting that is definitely not about Trump, winky face. Pretty much. Definitely not meeting with the FBI, I swear. God. Tweet number 15, there was at least some tension between safety operations, a large department whose staffers used a more rules-based process for addressing issues like porn, scam, and threats, and a smaller, more powerful cadre of senior policy execs like Roth and Gade. Essentially saying that there was people within the company, specifically the safety operations team, that weren't really happy how the company was being run at the time, with the complete disregard for the rules on how they were treating certain individuals on Twitter. But the concerns of the authoritarian attitude that the company was adopting were just completely superseded by Vijaya Gade, and Yoel Roth. Anyways, policy director Nick Pickles would push back about some of the lying about their partnership with the FBI. You could see this unnamed employee would ask Nick, are you comfortable with marketing talking about misinfo by saying that we detect it through ML, human review, and, quote, partnership with outside experts? I know that's a bit of a slippery process, so not sure if you want our public explanation to hang our hat on that. Nick would reply, can we just say partnerships? Example, not sure we describe the FBI/DHS as experts or some NGOs that aren't academic. And this would be related to one of my favorite tags that you would start seeing on social media sites in the last couple of years, the misinfo tag. Oh, what this person's saying is misinformation. Misinformation according to who? According to Twitter? Because their sources are government sources like the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, which, clearly have political biases that are trying to silence half the country. So it's like, okay, well, even if what they're saying now is disinformation, let's say, your sources, even though they are nefarious by nature, are correct. What the information the experts are telling you is correct. Sure. But now that it's coming from this source that you can't trust, and they're also trying to, silence any opposition, you're like, well, I mean, is it saying? It just becomes a bigger thing than it would have been to begin with. I mean, all it does to me would illustrate some sort of, ulterior motive. This post illustrates Yoel Roth complaining about the internal and external pressure after the FBI told Twitter to remove the Hunter Biden laptop story by the New York Post. I mean, what did you think? You were diving it. You thought it was cool to be a secret undercover agent at Twitter doing the bidding of the good and the just, but in fact you were a puppet being used and controlled by government officials. And in my experience, generally the people that want that power don't deserve it because they are corruptible. The type of person you have to be to hold the power of truth is, like some Jesus level altruistic type of, ascended human-based being. Perhaps only Little B can do it. Who knows?
Ryan Seacrest. Ryan Seacrest. Ryan Seacrest.
This all kind of leads to tweet number 34, where Matt says, in the docs, execs often expand criteria to subjective issues like intent. Yes, a video is authentic, but why was it shown? Orientation. Was a banned tweet shown to condemn or support? Or reception? Did a joke cause confusion? So what this means here is that people were being suppressed or having their tweets deleted, not because it violated any policy, but because certain people at the company, these high-level executives like Vijay Gadde and Yoel Roth, essentially just personally didn't like it. They would label something as misinformation, not because the information was wrong, but because they didn't agree with why the information was being presented. If a tweet was banned and someone would take a screenshot of it and repost it, why did they repost it? To support said banned tweet or to condemn it? And one would have more precedent than the other. One would get you banned and one wouldn't. Take a guess as to which. Or would they label something misinformation if it causes confusion, such as a joke? Did the joke confuse people? Or did everyone understand it and laugh at it? Because if not, then that's misinformation. Perfect. ABC would tweet out a news story. Nearly 50,000 voters received wrong ballots in Ohio. Do you feel safe mailing in your ballots? This was like a pro mail-in ballot news story. Trump would reply, no, a rigged election. This would lead to internal Twitter team talking about slapping a mail-in voting is safe warning label on Trump's tweet. But then actually they checked the story and realized what he was saying is actually factually accurate. But again, just illustrating that, oh, we don't like what he's saying, so let's label it misinformation next time. We'll get him next time, guys. Then there's this tweet by Donald Trump. Big problems and discrepancies with mail-in ballots all over the USA. Must have final total on November 3rd. This tweet would be, quote, visibility filtered, meaning that no one would be able to interact, like, or even share it, even though we clearly saw previously that was actually what he's saying was factually accurate. Then we have actor James Woods taking a screen cap saying that Twitter is suppressing this. That gets juxtaposed with various pro-Biden tweets that are basically saying the same rhetoric, disavowing mail-in ballots. So you have this one here. This is so disgusting and terrifying. They're going to try and steal the election. You have 1 week. If you haven't voted yet, don't mail. Drop it off or vote early. If you can't vote, make sure your family is. Unless they're Trump supporters, just let them forget. And then we have the internal Twitter team talking about that tweet specifically, saying this is an edge case with commentary and still encouraging voters not to vote by mail. I believe we should label it. That means label it as misinformation. Then we have Patrick Conlon replying, I think that I'd not bother with labeling this one. It's still encouraging people to vote, but expresses the concern that mail-in ballots might not make it in time, which seems fair. This is close to the election date, still encouraging people to turn their ballots in person or vote in person. Twitter then implements an L3 de-amplification tool, which means that Tweets that are also being tagged as misinformation would now be de-amplified. Matt Taibbi would write, the significance is that it shows that Twitter in 2022 at least was deploying a vast range of visible and invisible tools to rein in Trump's engagement long before J6. The ban will come after other avenues are exhausted. Taibbi would write about the non-Trump related chaos within Twitter at the time. He says, before this riot, the company on J6, the company was engaged in an inherently insane/impossible project, trying to create an ever-expanding, ostensibly rational set of rules to regulate every conceivable speech situation that may arise between humans. The project was preposterous, yet its leaders were unable to see this. When panic first breaks out on J6, there's a fair share of WTF-type posts mixed with frantic calls for Twitter to start deploying its full arsenal of moderation tools that they had been acquiring over the past few years. Yoel Roth receives the following message: appreciate all your hard work today. We've heard from a reporter that they have a trusted source telling them we're restricting Trump's ability to tweet. Sorry for this annoying request, but wanted to chase it down with you before starting an email chain, etc. Yoel Roth would reply, we have not. Oh my God, I just realized. Yeah, we have not, which is clearly not true. See, this goes back to the whole visibility filtering thing. It's like he's saying we have not because no, he still can tweet. He just can't say anything we disapprove of, and you know, anything he says basically it's just not going to be seen by anyone or be able to be shared or interacted with. So. Essentially, yes, they are restricting his ability to tweet. But Yoel Roth plays these little mental gymnastics to get around what he's actually doing. Then there's this tweet from Donald Trump saying, these are things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and peace. Remember this day forever. This would lead to conversation within Twitter. What the actual fuck? Can this go to staff? I'm labeling this now. Roth says yes. Sorry, I actually got emotionally angry seeing that. Turns out I'm not a full robot. Who knew? I'm gut-wrenching. He's a horrible human being. And just to reiterate what Trump actually said, he wants everyone to go home in love and peace. Part 4, The Removal of Donald Trump by Michael Shellenberger. January 7th, the day after the collision at the Capitol, there was public outcry from many celebrities about permabanning Donald Trump. A lot of people wanted that. People like Michelle Obama, tech journalist Kara Swisher, the ADL, venture capitalist Chris Sack. At the time, CEO Jack Dorsey was on vacation and deferred the situation to Yoel Roth and Vijay Gadde. And just to illustrate the personal bias towards Donald Trump, in 2017, Yoel Roth tweeted, yes, the person in the pink hat is clearly a bigger threat to your brand of feminism than the actual Nazi in the White House. That is preposterous. Again, you can not like Donald Trump, fine. You could disagree with him and think he's not a good person or a good president, but I mean, he's not a Nazi. There's nothing he's not going Kanye. Calm down. Yoel Roth is clearly just a hall monitor on a power trip. This is a bit of a side note, but here, take a look at this. Here's a tweet that's currently still live by Yoel Roth. Can a high school student ever meaningfully consent to sex with a teacher? The answer is no. Why are you writing an article about this? The answer is just no. God. Just for a little context here, according to Twitter's policy, blocking a world leader from Twitter or removing their controversial tweets would hide important information people should be able to see and debate. It would also not silence that leader, but it would certainly hamper necessary discussions around their words and actions. And if you remember, at the time, Donald Trump was the sitting president, like it or not. Obviously, there is a clear bias there, but we'll dive into that more towards the end. Roth then brags to a colleague that he managed to convince Jack Dorsey to implement a 5-strike policy, with the 5th strike being a permaban, changing the rules to try and remove Trump and subsequently anyone that opposes their ideas. Further in the exchange, the colleague asks if they can bend the rules even further And finally, deplatform Trump, but Yoel says no, this would be Trump's first strike. There isn't a whole lot of pushback internally about permanently banning Donald Trump, except for this one brave junior level employee who has remained anonymous. He says this might be an unpopular opinion, but one-off ad hoc decisions like this don't appear rooted in policy, are, in my honest opinion, a slippery slope and reflect an alternatively equally dictatorial problem. This now appears to be a fiat by an online platform CEO with a global presence that can gatekeep speech for the entire world, which seems unsustainable. Yoel Roth attempts to ban the hashtag #StopTheSteal, a hashtag that had been taken over by Trump supporters and allegedly QAnon here, but an employee pushes back saying, "I'm too worried about the risk of de-amplifying counter speech with Stop the Steal," which Yoel Roth protests to with saying, "Eck." At this point, Trump's tweet has been removed from the platform. People start screenshotting it. So now there's an internal debate as to what to do with people posting screenshots of it. In a similar situation we mentioned before, some people are screenshotting it, like this person here, as a way to disavow what Trump said, and some people are screenshotting it to support what Trump said. So they do exactly what you think they did. Anyone that would post the tweet in support of Donald Trump would be banned, and then anyone who posted the tweet advocating for disavowing Donald Trump, would only have their tweet deleted. A sales executive would contact Yoel Roth saying, "Hi, Yoel, I have a question regarding Twitter's safety thread and regarding POTUS and Jack's email. Jack says, quote, we permanently suspend if our policies are violated after a 12-hour account lock, end quote. What policies is Jack talking about? Is spreading misinfo a violation, like his past tweets about election? Or is it more about a tweet inciting violence? I'm asking because we are getting tons of calls from clients following Facebook/Instagram's decision. They had banned Donald Trump at this time. So some clarity would be great. Thanks." Yoel Roth would reply, "Hey JP, for internal awareness, this would be any policy violation, not just limited to the elections, but before sharing anything, please coordinate with redacted. On the comms side, obviously a ton of interest in our position on this. Want to ensure we stay aligned." Conversation continues. "Thanks, Yoel. We'll connect with comms team for sure. One last question. In the past, we'd exempt policy violations from a world leader due to the public interest value. We are dropping the public interest now, and any new violation could be a trigger for me to understand. Again, we'll check with comms regarding what we can/cannot share publicly." Yoel would reply, "Apologies for the slow reply. I've been back to back all day. In this specific case, we're changing our public interest approach for this account to say any violation would result in suspension. We aren't completely getting rid of the public interest approach, though we do not have work planned on revision in H1 2021. So they were referring to Twitter's public interest exceptions policy, which essentially for public leaders like the President of the United States, they would circumvent certain rulings that would apply to normal accounts. As we mentioned before, because it would completely disable conversation about what these leaders were saying. And of course, that would be applied to literally every leader on the planet, regardless of how evil the things they do or say are, except for Donald Trump. And to cap off this part, we have that one brave junior level employee from before chiming in again one last time in a last-ditch effort to bring some kind of reason to the fervor around Donald Trump at the time. He says, "My concern is specifically surrounding the unarticulated logic of the decision by Facebook. That's the space that fills with the idea, conspiracy theory, that all social media heads and internet moguls at every layer sit around like kings, casually deciding what people can and cannot see. And it's unhelpful to the internet ecosystem as a whole. Again, this is my honest opinion only. Based, this guy should get a raise." Part 5, The Removal of Donald Trump by Barry Weiss. Jan 8th, the day of banishment. Internal Slack messages seem to illustrate that most employees want Donald Trump removed, even if they outright admit that they know for certain he hasn't actually broken any rules. One employee actually tries to push back against this by saying, "Maybe because I'm from China, I deeply understand how censorship can destroy the public conversation," which gets replied to, "I understand this fear," which they don't, "but I also think it's important to understand that censorship by a government is very different than censorship of the government. The First Amendment in the US and similar legislation in other countries with similar concepts exists specifically to prevent the government from silencing the people. I respect that, but realistically, we impose far stricter rules on effectively everyone else on the platform." We started labeling/restricting his tweets, which again, Yoel Roth mentioned earlier that they were not doing, his tweets when they became a threat to democracy, which is an opinion, and seemed like that was our red line yesterday. He clearly attempted to overthrow our democratic system of government and showed no signs of remorse, which again is circumstantial, that is just an opinion. If this is not a clear reason, it isn't, to suspend him again as an unhinged ruler attempting to subvert the most powerful democracy in the world, I'm not sure what would be. Shrug emoji. There's a ton of internal pressure within Twitter to ban him, and the people in charge of banning Donald Trump concluded in this exchange here that he was not inciting violence at all. You can see this by Twitter's head of policy, Annika Navaroli. "I think we'd have a hard time saying this is incitement. It's pretty clear he's saying the American patriots as the ones who voted for him and not terrorists. Don't see the incitement angle here." And that, of course, is in reference to the two tweets that Donald Trump made on January 8th, his final two tweets. One of which being the 75 million great American patriots, remember that part, who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. So what was happening there is that people within Twitter were saying that his reference to American patriots is in reference to the people that broke into the Capitol building. Unfortunately, he said that there were 75 million of them, so I mean, it's very clear that he was referencing the people that voted for him. He's just talking to his constituents, saying that they have a big voice and that they shouldn't give up and continue to fight for, what they believe in the future. Again, you could disagree with what he believes in and his values, that's fine. But to say that this is an incitement to violence, it's just not true. And then this was the other tweet. "To all those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th, which is childish and petty. I would agree there. But again, I don't think this is incitement to violence or, misinformation about the election, saying that it was stolen from him. He's just being a petulant child. I don't think that's bannable." Now that you see what was being referenced, Annika would jump in, following up from that previous conversation. "I am also not seeing clear or coded incitement in Donald Trump's tweet. I'll respond in the elections channel and say that our team has assessed and found no violations for the Donald Trump one." Even though Annika would later testify in court saying, quote, "For months I had been begging and anticipating and attempting to raise the reality that if we made no intervention into what I saw occurring, people were going to die." Again, no incitement to violence, but one under oath saying that she was begging everyone to do the right thing and get rid of him because he was literally going to murder people. This is what we're dealing with here. Bari Weiss then goes on to juxtapose how Donald Trump was treated by being permabanned from the platform for, being a little childish, as compared to other world leaders that literally called for violence against their own people. Let's go through some of these tweets here. This one is from the Ayatollah of Iran saying, "Our stance against Israel is the same stance we have always taken. Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor in the West Asia region that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible and it will happen." That is something that was said on Twitter and not deleted and is still live. Ayatollah was not banned for that. Then we have the former Malaysian Prime Minister saying, "Muslims have a right to be angry and to kill millions of French people for massacres of the past." I believe that tweet was removed. Yes, it was deleted, but his account was not banned for that. That is incitement to violence. In 2021, Twitter allowed Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to call citizens to take up arms against the Tigray region. Twitter allowed the tweet to remain up and did not ban the Prime Minister. It's in, oh my God, is that their language? Bruh. Yeah, their language is like, it literally looks like something made up in a video game. That is their letters suck. Those are stupid. Fuck that country. In early February 2021, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government threatened to arrest Twitter employees in India and to incarcerate them for up to 7 years after they restored hundreds of accounts that had been critical of him. Oh yeah, Donald Trump, incitement to violence, sure. Our pal Vijaya butts in and tries to persuade people into banning Trump under the guise of coded incitement to violence, that thing that everyone had agreed on before was not true about what he said. She says, thanks, the biggest question is whether a tweet like the one this morning from Trump, which isn't a rule violation on its face, is being used as coded incitement to further violence. If you have any context or insight, we should consider. I am all ears. Example, use of the term American patriots, and they will not disrespect or treat unfairly in any way, shape, or form. This is an interesting question, says somebody else. I'm going to speak with my team ASAP to see if we can run a quick survey to get a reaction on the language, blah, blah, blah. Team Scale asking if we would consider Trump's tweet for glorification of violence. If we consider American patriots to refer to the rioters, they have a point. From my perspective, team, my laptop, oh, that was someone who cares about that. Scale has said they understand our position, but will continue to push their glorification of violence assessment with leadership. They see it that he is a leader of a violent extremist group who is glorifying the group and its recent actions. And then things obviously escalate very quickly. Here it says, just an update for you. Redacted, I spoke to Redacted just now. They understand our assessment of this individual tweet, but they now view him as the leader of a terrorist group responsible for violence/death comparable to the Christchurch shooter or Hitler. And on that basis, and on the totality of his tweets, he should be deplatformed. They will continue to push that argument with leadership, and we will see where it falls. Just so everything's clear here. One person died from a gunshot to the left shoulder, and then one person died from amphetamine overdose, which I wouldn't blame that on the J6 thing. And then 2 people died of a heart attack, which I wouldn't also blame on the J6 thing. So one person died as compared to 6 million via Hitler. Very comparable. I get their comparison. Completely understand, sure. Donald Trump is permabanned on Twitter. You see employees internally essentially just dancing on his grave, taking credit for getting rid of a president. Oh, fair enough. I mean, it is a pretty difficult task. All you have to do is just donate a bunch of money to the opposing political party and then have them completely infest the top brass of your company so you can essentially just do whatever you want. Then you see this employee just kind of illustrating how they're addicted after that one taste of power they got and just needing more. They said, very excited to see us handling more categories of misinformation. For the longest time, Twitter's stance was that we aren't the arbiters of truth, which is true. Remind everyone, they are not the arbiters of truth, nor should they be. But this person continues, which I respected, but never gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling. Yeah, because you're not the savior, you're not Superman, you're not like the hero in this story. Stop trying to pretend that you are. I don't know why you have to interject yourself into your job. How about you get rid of some of the content exploiting children, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point in the future. Anyways, they continue. That said, my dad is a medical doctor, blah, 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 whatever, who cares. The COO, Parag Argawal, who would eventually replace Jack Dorsey as CEO after he stepped down, had actually voiced some concerns about the ripple effects of banning Trump and the extent of their content moderation. I would assume that is in reference to, I think we may be overstepping our boundaries here. And then just to cap everything off, we have essentially just foreign leaders kind of disavowing Twitter for the move they made here. I'll just let Bari Weiss illustrate it here. She says, outside the United States, Twitter's decision to ban Trump raised alarms, including with French President Emmanuel Macron, German Prime Minister Angela Merkel, and Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Of course, he has 4 names. So those are the Twitter files, basically just detailing all the deep, dirty corruption that was within Twitter at the time, all being perpetuated by the FBI. Okay, that's it. Bye.